Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. Welcome back to Paris History avec a Hemingway. Today we are talking about Madame Elisabeth, and she has something to do with Marie Antoinette, and that's about all I know because this is a series of women related to Marie Antoinette. So I'll let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, it's Madame Elisabeth de France.
Oh, that's a nice name.
Yeah, and she is the sister of Louis XVI.
So that's why she's de France.
De France, yes. She was born on May 3rd, 1764 at Versailles. She was the eighth and the youngest child of Louis the Dauphin and Mary Joseph of Saxony, and the sister, of course, of Louis XVI.
8 children. Wow.
Yeah, 8 children, yeah. She was born, of course, at Versailles. She was baptized at the Royal Chapel by the Archbishop of Reims, Charles Antoine de la Roche. Her father died in 1765 when she was just a year old. Very sad.
That is sad. I feel like that's a reoccurring theme, though. They always lose their parents when they're pretty young.
Yeah, they are when they're pretty young. I mean, they didn't live to be that old back then. So
yeah, they were marrying them off when they were 15.
I know. You got to get those birth years in there early.
Jesus.
Yeah. But her governess was Mary Louise de Rohan and watched over her and all of the other children. And they became very, very close. Elizabeth was very spunky. She was very smart and had a fondness for anything that was science related. When her 3 closest siblings in age to her were all boys. They all ended up going on to be the king of France. So here comes this, little tiny baby gal. And so she, of course, she's going to be some spunky little thing. She got to do something to get noticed.
I was going to say, the baby of 8, you got to be kind of crazy.
Exactly. But she also really loved to read philosophy. She liked to paint. She liked to draw. All these things that, a young girl was able to spend her time on when her brother was, when they were all going to go off to be kings. They could have cared less what she was doing.
Sorry, my brothers are all king.
She was just 6 years old when her brother became king and Marie Antoinette became queen.
6 years old.
Just 6 years old, yeah. When she was 13, her brother wanted to marry her off to the brother of Marie Antoinette, Emperor Joseph II. He was 23 years older than her. He was already widowed twice.
Ew.
Yeah, 23 years older, which actually isn't that old. I mean, he was 36 years old and he was a widow twice.
And she was 13.
She was 13. But she didn't want to. She said that she kept telling her brother she didn't want to get married. She wanted to stay with her family. She wanted to stay at Versailles. He finally agreed and allowed her to stay at court. And then she never had to marry anybody.
Wait, so she never was married? That's shocking.
No, actually, wasn't. No, and her brother was like, "That's fine." I'm sure it didn't go down quite that simple. But he was fine with her staying there. At 15 years old, she pledged her life to God, since that was her way. Because as we've talked about before, you pretty much had 2 choices. You could become a nun or a wife.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of choice.
Wasn't a lot of gray area in there. So at 15 years old, she kind of pledged her life to God. But she stayed at court. At 19, Louis XVI ended up giving her the domain of the chateau de Montreuil. It was rebuilt in 1772 by the Prince Rohan Guéméné, who created this domain and built these beautiful gardens. It was very close to Versailles, but she was not allowed to stay the night there until she was 25 years old.
25? What took so long?
Yeah, well, that's when you became of age for a woman.
Wow, so, 25. They married him off at 13, but you're at age 25.
Yeah. But guess how old you are as a man to become of age?
13.
Yep.
So basically, the women were just like prostitutes until they turned 25.
Yeah, so basically twice the age of a man. You can't do anything on your own. So every day she would ride her horse back and forth from Versailles, which it was very close, from Versailles to her chateau. She'd spend her day there walking in the gardens and enjoying herself, and then have to go back to Versailles every single night to sleep. But Marie Antoinette would sometimes come with her, and she said to her one day, she noticed how happy she was and said that, you're finally here and you're at home. I will tell tell your brother this. But she still, he wouldn't waver on it. He said that, nope, she still had to come back. Maybe she'd get into some mischief over there at 24 years old.
Well, maybe she meet a boy.
Maybe she meet a boy on those horse rides on the way back and forth. But she also served she had her own staff. She had a gal named Marie Angélique de Maco stayed with her. She was her lady of honor. She was very close to her. She was close with all the staff she had. She would frequently save up all of these different gifts that people would endow her with, and ended up giving to her different ladies on her staff, allowing them to build a dowry so that they could marry somebody a little bit better.
Well, wasn't that nice of her?
Yeah, because they had to also, they would marry these young girls. And then, that they would have to then have a dowry to give to their future husband. So if you didn't have you had such a little dowry, you weren't going to marry anybody very good.
Well, that still sounds better than Tinder dating today.
Yeah. Thank goodness you don't have to also have a dowry for that.
No, I met a lot of poor people on there.
Yeah. But on May 3rd, 1789, 25 years old, she was finally able to now be of age. She was able to she could sleep at her home, and she could attend the Estate General official court functions.
And she could sleep in her own castle?
And she could sleep in her own castle. But sadly, this only would last for about 5 months. Because
the revolution?
Yep, because 5 months later, on October 5th, she was at Versailles when the ladies that we just talked about last week broke in. And the next day, they ended up carting them all off to Versailles. She actually didn't have to go, but she decided that her place was with her family, so she was going to go with them. And it's reported that as their carriage went by her chateau, she bowed to it, saying goodbye, because she knew she was never going to see it again.
Oh, that's depressing. Also, she should have ran away. Don't go to prison with your family.
I know, she should have just run away, but she, kind of devoted herself to them. At the Tuileries, when they were staying there, she began to start to use her voice a little bit more. She would speak up against her, to her brother, and also the his political decisions he was making. She thought some of them were rather stupid, and that he needed to go along with the assembly and the things that they were saying. Her other brother, the Count d'Artois, which was the future Charles X, was able to get out of France. He got down to Turin, and so the two of them would exchange letters, and she was rather outspoken, and told her brother, Charles, to gather up as many of the leaders of Europe that he could, to try to talk some sense into Louis XVI. Many of these letters were intercepted by the assembly, and then they were even more upset because obviously it showed that Louis couldn't even control his own family.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but she still stayed very loyal to them. On June 20th, 1791, she along with her sister-in-law and her brother, she crept through the streets, the dark streets, trying to escape. And of course, we know that they did not get to their intended destination. They were caught in Varennes and sent back to Paris. Exactly a year to the day, the Tuileries were stormed, the Swiss guards were killed, and rioters that broke in looking for the queen thought that she was the queen, and so she was quite fearful for a short period of time, thinking that they were going to kill her.
Oh gosh, so they thought she was the queen.
Yeah, they thought she was the queen. I mean, back then, I mean, I guess you see them kind of, in the carriage going down the street, but it's not like today where we have 1,000 pictures of these people.
Yeah, I see them on a coin, and I'm sure they weren't that well made.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they got caught in Varennes, is that the guy I think it was the post office, noticed that this guy all of a sudden that showed up looks kind of like the one on his coin in his pocket.
She's wearing a big dress. She could be the queen.
Yeah. When they were sent to the Temple prison, she had to go as well. She was not sleeping, and she was filled with so much stress that she physically changed and became unrecognizable because she was not sleeping. She wasn't eating. And the stress got so much to her that she basically was just falling apart.
We thought the pandemic was bad, trying to be locked up in prison.
I know, but it is really interesting because the same thing, Marie Antoinette, it's actually called Marie Antoinette syndrome now, because her hair almost overnight turned white.
That's right. Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see, all like it's amazing how your body reacts to that kind of a situation, just completely changing.
Stress is bad, guys.
Stress is bad. Stress is very bad for you. So everybody go to Paris and sit by
I don't know, Paris is that relaxing.
Yeah. But she, still tried to keep her faith. She tried to thinking that they were going to make it through this. She sent letters to her former ladies that they, most of them, they were sent out, but she received very few letters from anybody. They were all intercepted and destroyed. Her brother, of course, Louis XVI, was killed on January 21st, 1793. And then shortly later, in October the same year, her sister-in-law, Marie Antoinette, was killed. She was taken to the conciergerie before she, of course, was killed in that August. And Madame Elisabeth was left at the Temple prison with her niece, who was the Madame Royale. The convention actually planned to save her life and exile her out of France, but they decided after the quote unquote trial, we will call it, of Marie Antoinette, because they put her on trial, but it didn't really matter. They made up their mind what they were going to do to her. And the whole trial, as you recall from those episodes, were horrible, saying that she had sexual relations with her son, and also that Madame Elisabeth did as well. Just horrible, horrible lies were made up. So once she went through trial and they were talking about all these things, they decided they were not going to exile her, that she was going to have the same fate as her brother and sister-in-law.
Oh, that's so sad. And how old was she? She was 25.
She was not, when she was killed, she was 30 years old. She was known as the sister of the tyrant. And on May 10th, 1794, 7 months after her sister-in-law, she met the same death as well. The sad thing is that she did not know that Marie Antoinette had been killed until moments before she was going to die.
She didn't know for 7 months?
Yeah, she didn't know because they were cut off from everything. They couldn't, at that point, they weren't getting any information. But yeah, I think that's also kind of strange because I would think at some point somebody would say something to her.
I was going to say, they just torture her.
Yeah. But she had asked to see a priest before she was going to be killed. They refused. They told her no. And unlike, Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, they were carted off on, they were made a very big example of course, because they were placed on this cart all by themselves and slowly driven through the city. Madame Elisabeth was basically tossed into this cart filled with 23 other people. As they went through the same path through the city that her brother had gone before, she looked up at a building and there was a priest in the window blessing them as they walked by. So luckily she had her blessing before she was going to be killed.
This sounds so depressing.
Yeah. She ended up while she was there in the prison, she had such a calming way about her that she became kind of a counselor and a supporter of the people that were also in the prison. She ended up saving one of them because she had told another prisoner, Madame Elisabeth, that she should say that she was pregnant, because it was one of the only things that would stop the blade from falling is if a woman was pregnant. And so she said, just tell them you're pregnant. And so she did, and they ended up sending her to a hospital instead. And because the timing of it, this woman was so lucky, because then within a month or two, the fall of Robespierre, who created basically the terror, as it was called, that was basically sending everybody off to the guillotine, met the same fate and had
They guillotined him?
They guillotined him. And when that happened, basically it ended the terror. And a lot of this woman she was saved. Basically they stopped. I mean, people still died of the guillotine until 1972.
Which is insane to me.
It's crazy. But it still happened, but it wasn't, that's why they called it the terror, because it was just, thousands of people were getting, weekly killed.
I can't believe they did it to the guy who started it all.
I know. Well, I guess they probably like, yeah, guess what? Now it's your turn. But the conciergerie, when you go there, is actually 2 different rooms that kind of have a lot of information about Robespierre. It's actually pretty interesting. I mean, he was pretty high and mighty, thinking he was, in charge and making all these decisions. And then he ended up the same way that he, with the same fate that he put on everybody else, he ended up getting his self.
Karma, man.
Karma, yeah. But as they arrived on the scaffolding at the Pont de la Révolution, or the Place de la Révolution, that we know as Place de la Concorde, they ended up seating her on the bench that was closest to the guillotine, even though she was going to be last. So she had to sit there as 22 people before her would walk past her. And basically she'd have to watch every one of them have their head chopped off.
That is horrific. That sounds horrific. Like on earth.
Yeah, but as each lady passed, they curtsied to her and the men bowed. Many of the women would kiss her hand. And so she, was obviously very beloved by all of these people. And, because her rank, she was, at that point, they changed all their last name. They called them Capet. So she was Elisabeth de Capet, which is also, if you go to the conciergerie, there's a room that has all of the names inscribed, I think in marble. And if you look for Louis and Marie Antoinette, that's what their name will be under.
That is so depressing. And that's one of the few museums I have not visited. I need to go.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It is. It's very moving, especially if you know anything about Marie Antoinette's life. You go into this room that's down below, that's a chapel. It was kind of the last place that she was, and they painted it inside with this like dark navy blue walls, and then they painted these silver tears on it.
So that's where she was a prisoner, was in that room?
That was kind of the last place she was. And it's inside it has some paintings basically depicting of her time there. And then it has some big there's like one for Madame Elisabeth, and then there's one for Marie Antoinette, and these inscriptions on it. It's really emotional when you go see it especially the first time. It's just very sad. She and Madame Elisabeth and Marie Antoinette became very close. And the last thing that Marie Antoinette did was she wrote her a letter. She never got the letter because it was intercepted by Robespierre. But you can see part of the letter is transcribed on this marble slate that is in the little chapel. It's also the original. You can see it on display in the archives Museum, which is a museum most people don't know. It's very close to the Carnavalet. But she basically, basically says how devoted she was and how much she loved her. And it was all dedicated to Madame Elisabeth.
That museum's really pretty. I did a maternity shoot inside there.
Oh my gosh, that's random.
Yeah, because it's just really beautiful inside. And the woman just researched it and was like, she asked them if she could do it, and they said yes.
Yeah, when you walk in, like it's like just to go in there, just to walk around and see, you could walk into this room that was like the former kitchen and the fireplace. You could basically walk in there, probably fit like 80 people.
Yeah, it's like, and some of the rooms have all these big chandeliers. It's like a little mini Versailles in some of the rooms. It's really pretty.
It's really, really interesting to go see. But as she was, when it came her turn, she was laid on, she laid down on this plank that was below the blade. Her dress kind of slipped off of her shoulder, and her last words were to ask them for her modesty. And the execution lifted her dress back up over her shoulder, and then the blade dropped, and she died at 30 years old.
Well, she never got much time in her castle. She got a whole.
She did not to get to sleep there over the night, but it's very sad. But after her death, much like her sister-in-law and brother, she was, but with even less care, she was tossed naked into this mass grave at the Aronce cemetery. It was in the 8th. It was very close to what we know as the Parc Monceau. It was closed shortly thereafter. It was closed in 1797. All of the bones, of course, and the bodies were removed and put into the catacombs. But unlike some of the other cemeteries in Paris, it is not marked. So in the catacombs, you could see like these were the bodies from the Madeleine cemetery or this or that, but the ones from where she was, I can't speak, where she was, they were not noted. So we don't know what happened to her. In 1815, Louis XVIII came back, and he was trying to figure out where the body of his sister was. But because they were just basically tossed into this grave with no embalming or anything else, of course, the decay was so bad they couldn't ID her. So he never was able to find her.
Is he the only one that survived?
Well, no, because then the other brother, Charles X, and then, of course, the daughter, Madame Royale.
Gosh, what a hard time for their family. That sounds like the worst.
Yeah, but she was very loyal to her brother and to Marie Antoinette. She stayed very faithful to them till the last day. That Marie Antoinette wrote this letter to her. She said that you basically destined everything of your life to be with us. And of course, she never got to see that letter.
Yeah.
That is also, there is in the Louvre, you could go to the very end of the Richelieu wing. If you go all the way down there, there is actually 2 framed on either side before you go through these doorways. There's one of Louis XVI, his last will, and it's all like inscribed, embroidered on this silk fabric, and it's in a frame. And the other one is also the letter that Marie Antoinette wrote to Madame Elisabeth. You can see this. You can see versions of this letter all over the place. Sadly, Elizabeth never saw it.
Yeah, Elizabeth needed that.
Yeah. She also has in the Louvre, she had a bunch of furniture that she had created for her chateau. And quite a bit of it actually is in the Louvre today. So you could actually see some of the furniture that she had that was of her very own, which is rare to find some surviving things from before the Revolution. And so those things are all also in the Louvre, which is pretty cool. After her death, she's still seen as a Catholic martyr and a servant to God. She has been up for beatification a few times since 1924. They still have yet to allow her to be named a saint. It kind of got pushed off. But Madame Royale later said that she was like a second mother to her, and that she never would have survived being locked up in the Temple prison if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, the whole pregnancy thing worked.
Yeah. So it's very sad.
Very, very sad. Well, thanks for teaching us about that, Claudine. Now I won't be able to sleep tonight.
Hey, I've told you much worse things about some of the people that went to the guillotine. That was nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Paris History Avec Hemingway. Please tune in next week where we talk about another fascinating woman in French history. And also don't forget to join Claudine's live virtual tours every Sunday from Paris, where she walks around the streets and teaches you about the history in real time on video. And you can get some tours planned, your vacation to France planned, all by Claudine. So go to our website, claudinehemingway.com, and don't forget to tune in next week.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at claudinehemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.